So welcome back to our Insight series here at Zhorse. Today we have a very important subject we're going to discuss with you guys. Let me give you a little bit of background on this. With the average cost of a cybersecurity attack exceeding 1.1 million, a risk management approach is definitely a cybersecurity must. In addition to the financial costs, there is a significant business impact. 54% of companies experience a loss in productivity, 43 have negative customer experiences, and 37% see a loss in brand reputation. So with those numbers in mind, let me introduce you guys to Will LaSalle Jr. He's a global information technology and cybersecurity executive, adept at identifying, communicating, and mitigating enterprise risk. Will is also known for creating order from chaos. Will, I really like this concept. Thank you very much for being with us today to talk about cybersecurity.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me. Excited.
Thank you. Obviously, also welcome back, Mr. Daniel Clark, regular here at Zhorse in our Insight series. Dan, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Good to be here. And Will, I'm looking forward to hearing what you got to say because I'm going to write it all down and I'm going to use it unabashedly. I'm going to take it and claim it for myself.
Hey, that's knowledge. Knowledge is free. Knowledge should be free.
I'm kidding. Really, we're pleased to have you and looking forward to a lot of your insights around cybersecurity. So thank you for joining us.
No problem, guys. Excited. Thank you.
So, Will, I wanted to open by saying, for the second time in the last few weeks, a warning has been issued by the government to create unions around cybersecurity, right? Especially, there is a heightened risk for social engineering and phishing attacks. So I just wanted to open this webinar today by asking you, how can organizations be prepared for possible cyber attacks and data breaches?
Yeah, you brought up a great point with credit unions, and I think there's a reason why this warning or heads up, right? And it's the second in a month or whatever that was sent out to credit unions, right? And it just goes to show like the weakest link in a chain or whatever. And I'm going to explain as far as with my knowledge of credit unions, and I've helped quite a few, and I have some buddies that have created startup technologies around the need that cybersecurity that's credit union organizations have, right? And what that is credit unions are adept at being small, agile, right? So with that said, they don't have the muscle around a cybersecurity team, right? As well as even IT, right? So software development, infrastructure. So what they depend on is managed services, outsourced, third parties, right? And as we've known and we've seen through the years, right? Which is why a big piece has come about with third-party vendor risk management, right? With respects to making sure that these people that are doing the managed services and either infrastructure and or cybersecurity, that they have the proper hygiene in place, right? The proper protocols in place, and that they are maintaining, the classic confidentiality, integrity, availability of the data, right? So with that said, as we know from previous breaches, well known and not very well known, it sometimes ends up being a third party, right? A vendor outsourced. Now that's to be expected because a lot of companies' strategy is lean and mean with the employees and to have staff augmentation, et cetera. So the thing with credit unions being hit with these kind of two notices over the past, month is because of that, because those that don't know of their history are doomed to repeat it, right? So with respects to these breaches that have happened before. So what they're saying is, to definitely sit there and follow, I believe they have a tool, right? Their evaluation toolbox, that'll help, right? There's definitely platforms and taking a risk-based approach, right? Risk management approach to it, right? Frameworks like Zhorse, not frameworks, platforms like Zhorse and frameworks around that to be able to manage and mitigate that risk. But again, it's giving them a heads up because the bad guys are going to target them, right? I speak with a lot of CIOs and CISOs, and they always tell me, right, the battle, the cybersecurity battle, is trying to set the wall high enough, right? So the bad guys sit there and move to the next house, right? They move to the next organization because the wall is set high enough. And I think that's the analogy here is bad guys, bad actors, and whatever news that the government is getting is definitely saying that, hey, ransomware is going to go up, these cyber attacks, and they're going to go after easy prey, right? I'm sorry for the credit union guys out there and CISOs and CIOs, PCISOs, but they're also going to go after strategically, and if you put yourselves in their shoes, they're going to go after things like the critical infrastructure, right? Where they can make the most, you know, you usually when you're trying to make money, you say the most bang for the buck, right? But where these guys can make the most damage for the least amount of effort.
Let me ask you a quick question on just to follow up on that. I found it interesting. Will, can you build the wall high enough to make people go elsewhere? And what would you do if you, I mean, if you're a small community bank, let's say, or a credit union, you got 7 customers or 70 customers, or you're just starting out. What can you do to build that wall high enough that they'll leave you alone?
No, that's a great question, right? That's a great question. I like to speak with analogies and stuff like that. A long time ago, I used to really, I'm still into cars, but I used to make sure to put the club on it, make sure to take the pull out of the face and the radio, make sure to put the protected by Viper stand back. And it got to a point where I had that stuff and they still broke into the car, still stole the radio, right? And I had the two-way pager. I got the two-way pager. I ran outside in the snow. It was snowing. And I see somebody running down the street. I called the cops. All they did was take a report, send me a report, said, call your insurance. Okay, get it replaced, right? So the point that I'm making with that is, ever since then, I said, why am I spending the money on all this stuff? I have insurance, right? I have this. If they're going to steal the car, they're going to steal the car. If they're going to break in, they're going to break in, right? What you want to do is, again, there's another thing, right? What do you do if, you know, a bear is chasing your group, right? Just you know, run faster than the other people in your group, right? You're not going to outrun the bear, but run faster than the people in your group. You know, unfortunately, you know, he's going to catch up to the one that's the slowest in the group. So what I was trying to say with the build the wall high enough is make them where they look elsewhere. If you're the target, though, how do you build that wall to make it, right? And that's where these best practices are great, right? But the thing where people lax with the best practices is you got the blueprint there that the bad guys know you're following, right? So they know that you have all these, you know, tools in place, processes in place. I forget which one of the recent hacks it was, right? Where they knew it was a 3-day weekend coming up, right? So they went in there, you know, after hours on a Friday, right? And all hell broke loose, right? Just they got in there, they did all this, and when, as the saying is, when the cat's away, the mice will play. So that's when they ended up staging their attack. So one of the things that you have to do besides best practices in setting the wall is definitely sit there and as much as you can automate it, as much as you can get a partner or something that has 24/7, that there's automation, that there's orchestration, that there's the ability there that it will, if it senses anomalies, you got tools in place that can sense an anomaly, sense a breach, sense somebody's exfiltrating data or you know, going around in your network, that it'll shut things down proactively, send you alerts. So again, if you're on vacation, right, because it's Memorial Day and these guys are planning that attack, an example next week is in the US, some places have Good Friday, but not really, right? But in other parts of the world, they have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, Sunday off, right? So what you want to do is make sure that even in those instances, you have coverage. To add on to that kind of, you can never build a wall high enough, right? We've seen so many breaches with indirect supply chain hacks that have affected Okta, right? Microsoft, you know, I'm trying to say Samsung, through these hacks, and you've you know, and I believe this latest one with lapses was either spearheaded by a group that was a 16-year-old, right? So what you could do is try to mitigate as much damage that comes in. My analogy had insurance, and that's one of the things I would recommend too, right? You get hit with ransomware, et cetera. You make sure as part of your cyber hygiene, you have insurance so they can help you with any kind of digital forensics and anything to be able to recover. So definitely, you know, having that in the toolkit as well. Hope I answered your question, Dan.
You did, Will. And if I just summarize, basically, we need to be building the wall as much as we can, but we need to also have ways to recognize an intrusion quickly and respond to it quickly, even with fail-safe. And then we should also have pursue insurance coverage for certain aspects of that if we can. It sounds like a 1, 2, 3 punch. That sounds pretty potent.
Thank you. Yep, definitely, Dan.
Good. Thank you.
Great summary.
Will, so there's I don't think I told you before, but I was a data protection officer in my past, in a previous life. And so let's say as many people in your industry are saying, it's not a matter of if, but of when, right? Yep. So let's say a data breach happens, right? How, or a cybersecurity attack happens, how am I, or what are the most important steps that an organization, such as a credit union, a community bank, can take to ensure that that data is secured, right? The data organization, the attack is going after.
Yeah, so definitely an organization should have a clearly defined, if they don't already, they should definitely be one of the things that they define in terms of an incident response plan, right? And part of that incident response plan should have, right, the assessment of what damage or what was trying to be done, the impact to not only data but the business, any kind of continuity. You were saying reputational risk, right? And kind of kick that off with all those communication channels and opening it up. Stop the bleeding, right? Stop the bleeding and stop them in their track. I think it's like what we were saying a little while ago with automation techniques or even manual intervention. And then remediation, right? The last step, I think, which most of these are going to happen in parallel and depending on how big the organization, or if you have the insurance and you get the involvement of forensics or a managed security provider to help you in this breach, right? And then it's doing a root cause analysis, implementing the corrective action plan around it, right? How did they get in, and what could we done? What could we have done, right? Lessons learned. And then the one thing I really like as well that a lot of government organizations, a lot of consortiums are doing is sharing that information amongst each other, right? So one of the things I like, and being a futurist and talking about autonomous driving, automation, right? RPA, all those great technologies that are making their way into not only cybersecurity protection, but also the attacks, right? These same technologies are being used by the hackers to increase their ability to attack. Is the thought process of, if one, with autonomous driving, if one learns, they all learn, right? Like a hive kind of mentality, right? So my thing is having this tribal mentality of, we learn from our mistakes, we're sharing that knowledge, right? So you can better protect yourself, right? And I think that goes back to what you were saying. The government is sending out credit unions, sending out this kind of stuff, because the best form of defense and the best form of, like you were saying, remediation, it goes back to even like your physical health, is prevention, right? Yes. It's an apple a day, right? Keeps the doctor away. When we were little, people tell you get 30 minutes of activity, tell kids to get 30 minutes of activity. So with us, it's practicing good cybersecurity hygiene for organizations, and the best way to avoid that stuff is to avoid that stuff, right? Prevention. But again, I think we went through some of the steps if you do indeed, unfortunately, get hit with a breach.
Definitely. Well, thank you for that. At the end of what you were saying, you touched on a topic that I've been hearing a lot lately, and it's cyber hygiene, right? I have to tell you, I don't know very much about this. Can you please explain a little bit about this?
Yeah, you know, it's a great term, right? Phrase, buzzword, whatever, right? But it's basically the way I look at it is like best practice, right? The analogy I give to it is like personal hygiene, right? Wake up in the morning, you know, brush your teeth, right? Floss, right? You know, so when you get a checkup, you visit your doctor, they're telling you, you know, the steps to do, and that's personal hygiene, right? With cybersecurity hygiene, it's basically that kind of stuff. Make sure to check your plans. Make sure if you have a DRP, you know, if you have a disaster recovery plan, business continuity plan, that you're doing checks, right? Make sure that you have your automation in place. If you don't have automation in place, that you have your meetings, that you're doing your checks and balances, you're checking firewall logs, you have teams, you're using best practices in terms of MFA, setting strong password. Definitely that you have a cybersecurity awareness and training program, right? And you're making sure that people take it seriously, that they, you know, originally being from New York, New Jersey, you know, big for the past 20 years was you see all over the subway, you see something, say something, right? And so that kind of mentality, you see something, you're doing this, you're reinforcing to people. We all, you know, for those of us that have kids, we all know you got to keep telling them to clean their room, right? But then when they're doing it and it becomes habits. So I think cybersecurity hygiene, all these kind of stuff, best practices, do this, do that. There can be a laundry list that we can go through and take up 30 minutes, but it's making sure that this becomes second nature is what I personally feel. Like I said, you can put a checklist. The frameworks have everything that you would need to do, right? We touched on some of them, but you have concepts that evolve, right? People want to talk about zero trust. People want to talk about no passwords. But then people want to tell you got to have it complex as all hell, right? So those things mature and evolve like everything else, right? Whitelisting versus blacklisting and stuff like that. But it's have something, deploy something, you know, practice it, and continual improvement is what I view, you know, cybersecurity hygiene as.
Let me jump in with another question, and this is fascinating, Will. So thank you for taking time to be with us here at Zhorse today.
No problem.
I know very little about cybersecurity. That's why I'm asking these questions. Okay. I understand, my limited understanding, we are going to get hacked and people are going to break in. If I'm in a company, it's going to happen. I can just kind of count on it happening. I was in a meeting a couple of years ago and someone kind of said something that was an epiphany for me. He said it's going to happen. So the question that we have is, do we really strengthen the controls to stop it from happening, or do we strengthen the controls to react to when it does happen? And I thought about that for a while and I got to my own conclusion. When you hear that statement, what could, aside from the typical, well, you want to make sure your controls are good to begin with, what would you say we should be focusing on today? Is it reaction to when it happens, or should we try to build a fortress so it can never happen?
That's a great question, Dan, and I'm going to answer it, you know, honestly, right? And from the perspective of when I talk to when either I'm in a role as a CIO, CISO, and oversee security, or when I'm advising people. And I tell my daughter asked me the other day about what I do, and I told her, you know, being a consultant and everything like that, and cybersecurity and IT as a whole. So I tell people what to do and how to do it, and they don't take my advice, right?
Excellent.
So yeah, so but they pay me, well, right? So but people, the story behind that is people don't have to take my advice, but what I advise people is taking a risk-based approach. And what that means is, but taking that approach to answer you, is prioritization. And the prioritization is, if you run the risk of getting a fine, right? Prioritize that higher and do that control. Whether you believe that you're going to get hacked or not, right? Take that kind of approach. If you're sitting there and you're saying you're going off the mentality that it's not a question of when, I mean if, but when, right? Then make it like you were saying, and we talked about a little while ago. Make it where how can you recover, right? So recovery as quick as possible should be, right? So that approach takes, make sure you got backups, right? Make sure that, you know, it's n minus whatever, right? In terms of recovery, right? So what that would mean is, oh, you're taking backups every 4 hours. So if something happens, you get hit with ransomware, you're okay because you can recover systems back to a snapshot 4 hours before, right? So if you want to take that approach, but no one has, and I have yet to meet the company that has infinite resources. They all have finite resources. So you create a nice list using a baseball analogy, and what's above the Mendoza line, right? What's sitting there making the cut to be able to be implemented? The other stuff is nice to haves, and you got them there. You're working towards them. In 20 years plus doing cybersecurity, I've yet to meet an organization that's not in a perpetual state of implementing things and kind of catching up, you know, and then moving things around, right? And again, some very mature organizations that still, with everything in place, have gotten hacked, have gotten breached, have gotten hit with fines, right? GDPR was something that everybody knew was coming, and even when it came, you know, big organizations, I'll let them remain nameless, still got hit with, you know, very high fines, right? So that's the approach that I take. I give people as advice. You know, I'm trying to say, take it from a top-down approach. You know, rank your risks, and take into account which ones are the ones that not only are easy prey for bad guys, but which one the government's going to come and say, hey, you're not doing that. Here's a fine around it, right? Because penny saved, right? You can use that to do that with the tools. The biggest challenge for me in 20 years has been there's really no return on investment on any cybersecurity projects, right? The return on investment is, which we talked about earlier, right, Juan, with, you know, reputational, right? What's your reputational risk? And it's going to be reputation. That to me is huge. And a lot of people don't look at that. A lot of organizations, I don't want to do business with someone that I know, you know, to this day, I don't trust Equifax at all. Don't care what CISO they put in there, what they've done and everything like that. I just don't, right? Because I may not be impacted. They just resolved, I think, and people could get 4 years of monitoring. So what I'm going to do in the 5th year, if my credit card was exposed and everything like that, I mean, my social was exposed, what am I going to do in the 5th year, right? And then the way that they were breached and the laxness in that, you know, why am I going to trust them, you know, with my dollars again? So I think reputational risk is also a huge part of it.
Can we explore that for just a second? I'm sorry,
Sure.
Juan, I know you have a question, but I want to explore the reputational thing. One could argue, and I'm not saying I do argue or don't argue for or against any of this stuff, but one could argue that because of all the cybersecurity problems that companies are having, that the impact to reputation is diminished, and that it's not that big a deal as we get kind of inured to it. It's like when you see a lot of people get shot, all of a sudden hearing a person get shot, oh, that just happened again. That's kind of the way that I'm hearing a lot of people talk to me, say, well, it's another company got a breach. Oh, so what? We expect that to happen. That kind of bothers me that we're becoming a little complacent around that. But it seems like it's real. Do you get that sense that it's real, that people are getting a little complacent about these breaches, or is it something that we should really kind of shore up our personal animosity or energy and say, hey, we got to get on this, we still got to stop it, even though it may not have the significant impact to a reputation of a company as it did 4 years ago?
You know, and that's a great question, right? Because, and I think that has a curve. I don't think we've gotten to the point yet that we're coming down where people are numb to it, right? And the reason being, I think we're still on the upwards because we are talking about it. People are being, there's laws that are being still written and implemented, you know, across the U.S. at the state level we don't really have in the U.S. Our version yet of a GDPR, right, for the entire U.S. from a federal level, but you got state organizations, and then you got people that they don't want to be getting hit with credit card fraud. They don't want to be, right now you got, I can't even keep up with it, blocking all these text message spam that's happened over the last few weeks that they're saying is being attributed to, what's going on in the world right now, and them trying to, get people even at a personal level. So I think the uproar is still, but you're absolutely right. It's going to get to a point. I don't think we're there just yet, where then we're going to get numb to it, right? I'm Puerto Rican by descent, right? And but I was born here. But my parents were born there, and because of the fraud and everything like that with birth certificates, they had to get replacement birth certificates, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I think it happened twice, right? So it's something where it's just, and I've seen what the fraud comes from it, like people that are dead in Puerto Rico, and then someone here in the United States getting a driver's license with that person's records, right? Personally, I've seen this kind of fraud at organizations. And so I think the uproar is still there. I think what it's done, and if we look at it, right, the past 4 or 5 years, we're seeing this where, this country is taking down our democracy, right? They're hacking our elections, they're doing this. And so it's brought in more awareness to people to be able to push certain agendas. So I think that's been good, because otherwise 10 years ago, really, even 20 years ago, cybersecurity was just an afterthought. I know me and Juan have talked before. I was at an organization. I really just went in there to be their CIO. On the very first day I was there, I had my scope, a transformation project, etc. Said, okay, where's my budget line item for cybersecurity? Who oversees it? And they were like, what? We don't, I said, so how much do you guys have allocated to that? $0. So it became kind of like a Captain Phillips thing. It's like, okay, I'm your CISO now, right? So now I come in there, I'm just trying to be the CIO. Now I also got to build a cybersecurity program from scratch. And now it's funny, because this was 6-7 years ago. Now because of all the compliance, because of all the stuff going out there, they got hit with ransomware years later, even after implementing a program and stuff like that. They got hit with ransomware. Now it's at the top. Now they have a CISO role, right? So beyond the CIO, they have a CISO role. They have cybersecurity. They have budget, recursos, right? They have all this kind of stuff. And it's just, so I think we're still kind of getting up, but I agree. Eventually, people are going to be numb to it, like they are with some of the atrocities that are happening in the world, right? Where, like you said, somebody saying, oh, it's another unfortunate, right, school shooting and stuff like that. And it's sad, but we still have to continue. So on the cybersecurity tip, we definitely still have to continue and do good. But yes, there's going to be some a bell curve, I believe, and then it's gonna come down. I don't think we're there just yet. Some people, yeah. Myself, yeah. When I hear about these breaches, I could have told you that, right? But I think for the normal people, not yet.
I think that's good advice, to keep aware, alert, and can keep it on the top of the burner.
Yeah,
excellent advice.
Definitely. I was just thinking on. I really like your answer about the strategy for cybersecurity and how there's no one size fits all, right? You have to go in and do a risk-based approach to it and understand your biggest priorities and attack them. So given that, I wanted to ask you, because we talked about it before, about the importance of cybersecurity awareness and education, right? But I think we've also, all of us have been on the business end of some of these trainings that are just standard copy and paste training, typical things that you see over and over again, and you also become numb to them, right? How can you talk us about how can you implement a successful cybersecurity awareness and education program? Do you have some tips? Do you think what a company should focus on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the most critical, whenever I'm talking to people and advising, is definitely cybersecurity awareness and training, right? So you ask for some techniques because it gets numb, like Dan was saying, if people are just, oh, and it goes to some of the, and I messed this up, but it goes to gamification, right? And what I use that, and that's a broad term, but the way I look at it is, right now you got, for example, right now you got everybody out there doing Wordle. I haven't gotten into it, but you see the Wordles, you see people trying to guess what it is for the day, and it's gone kind of viral. 5 years ago, was it 5 years ago? Probably even more. You saw everybody walking down the street, holding their phones up like this, trying to catch Pokemon, right? With Pokemon Go. And to add to your point, Dan, you got that bell curve, right? And then boom, but you still got people playing Pokemon Go.
By the way, Will, I am a Wordle expert. I will have you know.
Oh, you see
I
that?
am a Wordle expert. I can usually do it in 2 or 3 words. Sometimes I do it the first one. So I just let you know.
Nice. No, you see,
Speak kindly to my Wordle world.
No, and I do, because what happens is that right there, when you put this kind of gamification things to it, you can get people engaged for learning, right? So if you put it, you know, so I'm telling people all the time, even in companies that I advise from a technology perspective, is incorporate some gamifications. It can just be like a scorecard. It can just be, right? It can be your ranking, right? You're showing. So now all of a sudden, people aren't just sitting there saying, I got to do my training, right? People are sitting there saying, man, I want to do my training quick, like Dan just said, right? And they want to be able to, let's say, gloat with the next person, or when the statistics come out, right? Oh, I'm in the top 3. I've seen this where I attend so I haven't in like the 2 years that we've been, you know, kind of sheltered and life's been a little different. But when I attend events, even, they have social aspects, they have gamification, right? And I'm usually the one like, man, I'm gonna take pictures, I'm gonna tweet, I'm gonna do this because I'm gonna be the leader of the scoreboard. And I win nothing, guys, right? Except, man, I was #1 on the scoreboard. So, you know, and then some people might see me and they go, Will, you're killing it on the scoreboard. And I'm like, yes, sir, you know, everything like that. But it's that, what, I don't know the chemical or whatever like that. I'm sorry. I didn't do that kind of research around it. But that's what I think, to break the monotony, to break the monotony, have these trainings. The other thing I like is I like trainings. I'm not going to name any names, but organizations that they do it from a funny perspective. They do it with animation. So they're changing it up. When they do their phishing attempts, man, some of these are good. They're timely, right? They did get repetitious. I got hit, you know, not hit, but 2 years in a row, because I advise multiple companies, so my emails and everything like that. So I get phishing tests all the time, right? So I got where flowers were sent. So I almost clicked on it. So yep, I almost clicked on it because I said, who's sending my wife flowers? You know what I'm trying to say? So I'm about to click on it, but you know, I think I have failed it because I opened the email or whatever like that instead of just clicking it to send it as the phishing and get the notification. But I didn't click on the link. I knew better, but I opened it like, what? Trying to see, I guess, the tracking number or whatever like that. So that one was a good one. They didn't get me the second year because they tried it again on Valentine's Day, the following year. But this kind of stuff is good because we get the reports, we see people that click on it, then they immediately get some reinforcement training, right? Because this helps out. So cybersecurity awareness and training, you know, is one of the best things that I recommend for organizations at a very good cost to help with the cybersecurity hygiene, like we said earlier.
And I'm glad we're finishing up with the phishing, because this is exactly the focus of the last warning, right? They're saying that the phishing is out of control. So I really like those phishing tests and being able to socialize those results, as you say, and reinforce the people that actually fall prey to these tests. So
it's great because, you know, guys, one of the things with cybersecurity awareness and training, it makes my life easier, you know, with a lot of my clients. And the reason behind that is I don't want them to get a breach. Because yes, while the clock is running and I can bill, it's, you know, the work around it, the stuff around it, the blame game that comes around it. But if people are just aware and they're not clicking, or they're aware to see something, say something, I'd rather get the email. When we talk about proactive versus reactive, I'd rather get the email that a lot of the clients and a lot of the end users at the clients send me. Will, is this you? Because they think it's me. They think I crafted the email, but it's the platform and the tools out there. Will, is this you? And I'm like, listen, I just reinforce it to them. I'm like, I say, that's great. But if you ever feel that way, because part of phishing attempts is too, especially if they've compromised an account, is to be on behalf of that person. And I've seen organizations make payments because someone has hacked that account, emailed them, say, hey, I need a payment done ASAP, right? And then the person makes that payment ASAP, right? Because it's coming legitimately from that person's mail, but it's because they've compromised the credentials, logged in as that person, mimicked them, told them to do a payment ASAP. They've done it because the urgency and they want to do well, right? Again, some other kind of psychology and terms that way above my education to know what it is specifically, but they'll do that thinking they're doing a good job. They're trying so hard to do a good job by their boss, and it was someone that they had compromised those credentials. So definitely they should be of that mindset, like, hey, is this you? Call them a different way, et cetera, et cetera. But that makes my life so much easier, because I have a customer right now, knock on wood, that I've had them for going on 2 years. No breach, no incident, nothing like that. I certify every quarter, and I'm amazed. And really, the only thing that we implemented was a very good cybersecurity and awareness training program. We go through normal hygiene, right? Hey, are we reviewing this? We're reviewing logs, et cetera, et cetera. Your policies are up to date, processes, right? Following these frameworks, but no breaches, you know, nobody, and damn near, pardon my language, 100%, you know, in terms of compliance around the awareness and training. And again, it's a great platform, friendly, funny. They have videos. They do videos training on the subject matter from a funny perspective, right? But they use a psychology term, I'm forgetting, that it was designed with that nature to have maximum retention. So that people don't even, more gamification, more mind games, but it helps reinforce and it helps them remember and retain this cybersecurity awareness kind of mentality, right? See something, say something, don't click here, ask people, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the best defense.
No, great. I think we've learned a lot today, and it's been a really interesting chat. What do you think, Dan?
I've enjoyed it a lot. I've learned stuff a lot that's going to help me. And yes, I am going to take some of these ideas and borrow them as I go forward. I think they're really good, practical, applicable, and they're at the right level, Will. I heard, I'm not an expert in cybersecurity, but I understood everything you said. And I appreciate that, because it was easy for me to get there. So thank you for sharing it at that level. I really appreciate it.
No problem, guys. Thanks. Had a great time.
I want to thank you, Will, for being so generous with your time also. And it's great having you as always and talking to you.
Likewise. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.